Welcome everyone to our next of our Learn Fast AIM webinar seminars. The This one's a kind of a special one to me. I've always enjoyed Pikes Peak, and I've got to know Tom back and forth over the last few years of chatting back and forth with data questions and just watching from afar him in his road racing things and endurance racing and now the Pikes Peak thing. So I'm really happy to have him here. But what we're going to talk about a little bit today is a put together of not only Pikes Peak and data and chatting about all of that, but also the sim racing side and getting data, and preparing for this Pikes Peak run using the simulator, and then doing the data analysis with that, and then getting ready to go off and run practice and eventually the race here in just in the next month or so. So looking forward to it. Tom Tang is our guest today. Tom, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Roger. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Been looking forward to this one for quite some time. The timing is just perfect. I think Tom was telling us the race car leaves the shop in about 30 hours, heading for the first
Mhm.
of the practice sessions that Tom will get on the mountain. Let's kind of start off a little bit with let's start in the middle a little bit and tell us about how many runs have you made up the mountain in the sim racing side, getting prepared for the big event.
Yeah, thanks. The sim has been a really great tool just because Pikes Peak, I think most people know that, 364 days out of the year, it's a public road, right? So only on race day, once a year is it kind of fully closed for the day. And so this year that'll be on Sunday, June 23rd. But that means it's pretty difficult to go out there and drive the road if you wanted to get some practice. And so for me, having a simulator available to me. I'm actually sitting in front of the one that I have in my home office here. Has been just really invaluable. And so I've been prepping to drive Pikes for a little over a year now. And
Uh,
so I think in the course of about 12 months, I've done maybe like 350 successful runs up the mountain on the sim. So quite a lot. And then probably double that in terms of unsuccessful.
yeah, I was gonna make a little joke about that, but yeah, yeah, exactly. And then of course watching video from others that have raced up the hill too. On top of that, no doubt, right?
Yeah, definitely. Lot of YouTube, a lot of watching great veterans before who have done successful runs to try and learn all of the 156 corners.
Where do you think you are with that? That's we all think of 12, 13, 15 corners on a road course that people work at it for hours and hours trying to learn that. Where do you think you are of understanding where you are at any one point on the track when you look out the windshield?
Yeah, so what's interesting is I think I've built pretty good memory of the run from start to finish. And one of the things that I was actually doing on my bike ride last weekend is I think a lot of racers here do the same, right? You sort of close your eyes or eyes half open and you visualize that like perfect lap, right? While you're not actually sitting in the car. So I was on a 4-hour bike ride and I decided as a challenge to myself that I would kind of play the run in my head from memory, and I was actually able to do it a couple of times
Uh,
successfully while on this bike ride. So
yeah.
I think the general sense is that I have a pretty good memory of the mountain now. The thing that I am unsure about is just because of how they break up the mountain into sections for practice and qualifying.
Right.
I've never sort of started a run at a different place necessarily, right? For
Ah,
me, it's always been from the start line. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly I can sort of adapt, right? And so another thing that I've been doing to kind of train myself is I've actually been pulling up different YouTube runs and just kind of jumping to a random spot and then seeing like how quickly does it take me to kind of locate myself, right, in terms of where it is.
yeah, that'll be interesting. And luckily you'll have a little bit of time and make a few runs from all the different locations, I suppose. So,
For sure.
perfect. The boy, what a great piece of technology, being able to have the sim in order to do what you're doing and not have to go up there and just kind of wing it the first few years and get your experience that way. That's a wonderful thing. How did you get involved in motorsports? What is this something a passion that hit you young, or is there some family involvement, or how did you find your way into this crazy little game?
Yeah, sorry, I'm laughing at Brick's comment in
Yeah.
the chat here. Um, no, for me, I got the bug for cars at a really early age, but I was unique in my family in that, no one in my family really
Oh,
cared about, cars. There's zero kind of racing or
yeah.
motorsport involvement. For me, it was, I remember being a kid and taking the school bus to school. I grew up in the Midwest, and so I was the unusual kid in that I actually sat in the front of the bus to kind of watch what the bus driver was doing, right? And I was really fascinated with how he operated a bus. And growing up in the late 80s and early 90s, I watched a lot of like Formula One on TV and other forms of racing. WRC was really huge at the time, and so just was really fascinated with cars, but didn't really have the means to do much, high performance driving or motorsport stuff until much later in life. So, I didn't grow up karting or doing anything
Oh,
like that. There wasn't really support or interest, from the family side. But it was really around college that, I did a few things during those years. One is I built a car that I ended up actually being able to take to the track. And being a guy that originally was just kind of doing stupid stuff, driving on the street or in the mountains. At my first HPDE, I had a pretty decent, prepped Integra, and I remember, I got passed by like some kind of Saturn, and like had to give him a point by, and was just like completely destroyed from an ego standpoint.
yeah.
But actually, that's what really ignited the passion for me to like get better at driving a vehicle at speed on a racetrack. Is I realized it's not about sort of the car that you bring, right, but really the person piloting it. And so in terms of the foray into motorsport, around that time, I also ended up going on what I call a fanboy trip with some of my friends to Japan. So we had saved up money. We wanted to visit all of these Japanese tuning shops. And while we were over there, we made some really good connections and started to build some relationships with the guys at Jay's Racing in Osaka, Japan. They're really well-known Honda tuners. They've done a lot of kind of hill climb and wheel-to-wheel racing in Japan. Jay's built cars doing not only time attack, but they raced in Super Taikyu series as well. And so we got this idea that because Jay's didn't have that much representation in the US, that we could put together a program to really promote their brand and to promote their parts. So when I came back, we ended up having Jay build a vehicle and shipping it stateside to run. At the time, the Red Line Time Attack series was pretty big in like 2008. And so we ended up doing that series for 2 years and winning a championship with that. So and just to be clear, at the time, I wasn't driving. I was managing kind of the program as a whole. But it also was what kind of triggered me into falling in love with the Honda S2000, which became my first wheel-to-wheel race car.
Was your ego still hurt from having to give the point by, and so you didn't want to take up driving quite yet, right? No.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I just slowly worked at it, right? I
Yeah,
think
exactly. That's how it always has to be.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, the story is similar, right? It's like 1 to 2 track days my first year, and then my second year, I think I did 20 or 30, right? And
yeah.
just caught the bug, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there you go. There you go.
yeah.
So once you got into that, what type of racing have you been doing in the last few years as you've gotten better and better with what you have and getting a better cars? I know endurance racing is a big part of what you have done as well. So what kind of racing uh, recently have you done?
Yeah, yeah. So from the time of getting into the S2000 and I ended up building one. Like most people, I didn't sort of jump right into wheel to wheel, right? So I started to do time trials, time attack, right, and found some success there, and felt like I was more comfortable driving a car at speed and being aware of the things around me. But, racing wheel to wheel was, ultimately the dream of mine. And so a couple of years after that, I started racing with NASA. I got my comp license with NASA in both SDCA, and I started doing like touring car racing, right? So NASA had a great ST series or Super
Yeah.
Touring series. So I built my S2000 originally to fit the Super Touring 3 class. And then when NASA launched ST4, I converted the car to race that because there was a bigger car count. And so that was a lot of fun. I did a lot of years of sprint racing. But I think for me, what I also really loved watching on TV, I mentioned watching F1 and rally, but I also loved watching endurance racing. So Le Mans is kind of this like bucket list dream item of mine. But leading up to that, locally being based in Northern California, lots of folks know about the 25 Hours of Thunder Hill. So I had always wanted to do that, and after having a bunch of years of sprint racing experience under my belt with a bunch of friends, we organized an effort for that and actually built a car for the 25. So we did that in 2022. And that was a lot of fun to finally be able to check that box.
Yeah, and you finished, which is a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Did well. Did well.
Finishing is hard. Yeah. So
Yeah.
just to finish was great. And we actually were on the podium for our class, the third in class, and somehow ended up ninth overall. So that was
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah, our family has done that event just as not from the car side, but from my son Andrew driving, and I think we did it 5 or 6 times, and it's a special event. Any of those endurance racing, longer
Yeah.
endurance races like that, especially are special events. What the We've had a couple of questions that have come in. What sim platform do you use? Assetto, right? Is that or do you use different ones and just happen to pick that one because Pikes Peak is in it? What do you use for
Yeah.
sim racing?
Yeah. So I have Assetto Corsa, I have Assetto Corsa Competizione and also iRacing, and I would say I dabble across all of them.
Mhm.
But I've really spent, in order to prepare for Pikes Peak, because it's available just for Assetto Corsa, I've been spending most of my time just on AC. There's a really good sim map built of Pikes Peak on AC, and so that's where I've for the last 12 months been focused on just driving that.
Yeah, exactly. And your data acquisition, we are a data acquisition webinar, certainly. So, what is your history with data? When did you first start using data? Did you use some sort of a phone app when you first started doing some of your HPDE stuff, or how did you get into this, and what was your progression of data?
Yeah, so rewinding back to, this is probably like 2010 or 2011 when was just doing a lot of HPDEs with my S2000. I wanted to start to get a sense of like how were my lap times.
Yeah.
And I'm actually blanking on the name of the company that makes this, but there was a lap timer system that I installed in the car. It involved like putting a beacon at start finish as well, so that when I went by, it would pick it up. Um, but that was my first foray into data acquisition, was just understanding what my lap times were, right? But the dream even then was, I was looking at some of the more serious race cars that were running, aim dashes, and I was like, man, I really want an aim dash someday, right? That was the gold standard. And so a couple of years later, I think I ended up buying like a used MXL or something like that. And Roger, you may not remember this, but I think in 2012 or something like that, when I got that aim dash, I was like, man, I really need to learn how to use this thing. It's way more powerful than just telling me what my lap time is. And so I think Tony and Joe at TC
Ah,
Design in Campbell, they hosted you for
yeah,
a session, just kind of doing an intro to data
yeah.
acquisition and learning how to use Race Studio. So I came to that and
Okay.
really got hooked ever since then, because I was
Ah.
like, wow, this is so powerful.
I
Yeah.
did not. I remember doing those. Two of my my best friends in that I have the most respect for in Northern California are those two boys. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so still enjoy talking with them. But we did, I think, 3 or 4 different ones at basics and advanced, and some different ones there. So that was
Yep.
I'm glad you were there. That's kind of fun. Hot lap timer is what somebody as Matt has guessed was what your initial lap timer probably was. Pretty
I
popular
think
at the
so.
time. Pretty popular at the
Yep.
time, and all of us until GPS came around, all of the different systems, we all had to have trackside beacons at first, right?
Yeah.
For a long time, not just at first, but for a long time until GPS
Yeah.
has finally taken over now. And I haven't set up a beacon in 10 years probably now, right? It's been a long time since we've used beacons. So the
Yeah.
very cool. When you're using data, since we are again a data webinar, the in your road racing data experience, when you did start to get systems that had a little bit more meat on the bones, for lack of a better word, what kind of information was you looking into the most? Was it that driver performance side, or was there vehicle performance? Were you always a
Mm.
tinkerer with the car, or vehicle health? What did you use the most and find yourself really drawn to?
Yeah, I would say for me, I focused on probably two halves, if you will. Vehicle health was definitely important to me. I think early on, doing time attack and racing and stuff, I was a lot of times out there either by myself or with just one or two friends, and so we didn't necessarily have the team and the support that we have around us today. So just making sure that the car was running properly was really important, right, in order to be able to finish the weekend. So, I ended up adding a lot of sensors to the car to be able to keep an eye on things that we didn't necessarily get just from the ECU, right? So looking at, pressures and temps and things like that to make sure that the car was running right. I think that was really important. So after every session, I would sort of download and take a look at that and know like car's running good. Okay. And then flip to the other side of the equation for me, which I cared a lot about was driver performance and sort of what I was doing, right? And I'm pretty simple in that I find a lot of value just looking at a speed trace, right? And a lot of kind of what I learned to look at, I learned from you, right? In terms of your sessions, but just looking at, where am I losing time, right? Where can I be, finding more of it, right? Comparing to myself, right? Looking at things like theoretical best, breaking up some of the sectors, right? And seeing like, am I braking early in places? Am I late to throttle, right? What does that translate into, right? Across, multiple laps, right? And seeing where I can find time and just chipping away at it. So that's really just been my process for improvement is, kind of looking at where some of the big deltas are, focusing on those. And once I've closed those up, then kind of moving to some of the fine tuning things, right?
Yeah.
To your point, you can have a ton of sensors and almost too much data, right? So for me, I pick and choose and sort of focus on the bigger problems and gradually whittle away at kind of the smaller ones.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, you've been to some of the on-site seminars, and of course a lot of these webinars we talk about, just having the GPS based channels, the stuff that comes from one of our solos is get you like 90% of the way there. Where you were slower, and the basics of why you were slower, right? Maybe less
Mhm.
G's in the corner, or less acceleration, or less braking. The rest of those channels are just answering questions about why of those things were slower, right? And giving you more
Mhm.
detail in it. And it's so those other channels are very, very valuable. But boy, you can get a long way with just some of the basics, as you just mentioned. The
Mhm.
I find it interesting you're making this switch temporarily. I suppose you're probably going to do other things as well, but
Yeah.
the endurance racing being such a long process, right? And you got lots of hours to get things done and get things right, and you're moving to this very much this blast of the shorter event of gosh, what 12 minutes or something is what 11 or 12 minutes of a run up this
Yeah.
hill. Well, how was that change, and are you having to recalibrate your mind a little bit to do what you're about to do?
Yeah, in some ways after having done a bunch of enduros, 4, 6, 8 hour up to the 25, the thought of Pikes Peak is in some ways a little bit less stressful in that, you said it yourself, right? The car has to work for about 12 minutes as opposed to much longer than that. I think the flip side to that, though, is that the car is under much more stress and load, right,
Yeah,
for those
yeah.
12 minutes than it is running an enduro, right? We all know that driving at enduro pace, you're taking it easy, right? You're rolling speed into the corners. You're not necessarily using the brakes. You're shifting early, and you have a completely different tune, right? You're tuned more for miles per gallon than horsepower. So with that in mind, the conversion of the car that I'm running for Pikes Peak this year, from being an enduro car. So the BMW that I'm driving this year is actually the same car that we raced at the 25 at the end of 2022. So we took essentially the last like year and a half to really transform that car from an enduro car to Pikes Peak car. So there was a lot of thought and planning that went into that. We essentially took the car back down to Barrett chassis and then built it back up, right? So for the 25, we needed the car to be tough, right? We ran like OEM metal panels and things like that because thinking that we'd get hit and whatnot. And then I ditched all of that and ended up going with a carbon wide body to be able to take as much weight out of the car as possible. But the wide body is also there to serve a few other purposes. One is to generate downforce, right? So we have a really large splitter, essentially a flat bottom, a really big rear diffuser. And then the wide body allows us to run much larger wheels and tires than we previously were able to. So we used to stuff a 275 square under the car, and now I'm running 295s in the front and 315s in the rear to get that mechanical grip out of those tight hairpins at the mountain.
Quite a bit of changes to the car. Have you not you talked about weight. You cut some weight out of it. You bigger tires and wheels. What did you make any big changes for the high altitude?
Yeah, we did. So, most people who follow Pikes Peak know that, you're losing up to maybe 40% of the power just because of the thin air, right? From the start line, which is around 9,000 feet up to the summit of 14,115. Here you go. You got all the stats here, right? So, because of that, running a naturally aspirated car, you have some disadvantages, right? And so, for my build, we thought a little bit about whether or not we should go turbo. But I talked to a lot of Pikes Peak veterans about that as well, and what we were concerned about with running a turbocharged setup was really the thermal demands of the mountain, right? So losing power is one thing, but with the thin air, with the altitude, everything gets hot faster, right? You need to really kind of think about how do you overcool your setup so that you can actually finish the run. And so, in talking to Jay, who's my engine tuner and longtime friend at Black Tracks, we ended up meeting in the middle and decided not to go turbo, but we're running a centrifugal supercharger. So the car has the Rotrex blower on it. So we are essentially able to double the amount of horsepower that the S54 was making before, but not dealing with some of the heat issues that having a big turbo may bring. Now I get that that's a little bit of a compromise, and so we're going to see how this plays out, but it's the strategy that we've decided to take.
Are you using the same boost at the start of the run that you'll have at the top, or have you used some boost tricks to make this thing be a little bit more power as you're losing power as you go up the hill?
Yeah, so with the supercharger, because it runs, with how the pulley system works, and the boost is essentially fixed. So unfortunately, we don't get the same advantages of a turbo where we can sort of throw more boost at it, as we climb to compensate for the altitude. But one of the things that we have done is we completely rewired the car from when it was an enduro car to now being built for Pikes Peak. So John at TrackSpec built a brand new wiring harness for the car to be able to support the ECU that we now run. So we run an Mtron ECU, and we're working really closely with those guys in Australia. So they've given us a lot of really useful tips and tricks to be able to ensure that the ECU is working at its best, right? In terms of adjusting and compensating for the altitude. So while we can't throw more boost at it, we can ensure that the engine is at least running as efficiently as possible, right? As the KPA value changes as we're climbing the mountain. So
And
we've added additional sensors kind of before and after the throttle bodies, as well as after the exhaust, to be able to get the data that the ECU needs to be able to do that well.
so you chose to have the ECU automatically do some of those things. You're not, changing maps as you go up the hill. That's not required.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I don't think I have the brain bandwidth to be able to do that. And the ECU can do it much faster than I
Yeah.
can. So we have a lot of cool tables that are built. And so, mathematically, it's doing a lot of the calculations as we climb.
I think that's probably wise. You're a busy guy, and then you forget one, right? Or grab two at one time, or jump
Yeah.
one or something, right? So it's probably better that way. The
Yeah.
training for Pikes Peak, yeah, I think of training there as number one, training your mind and getting ready for something like this with the sim that we've chatted quite a bit about. But what about physically? Have you done anything? Or are you just going to show up early and get to try to get used to the elevation, the lack of air, or what have you done physically to get ready for the event?
Yeah, so I mentioned that this Pikes Peak effort this year has been a year and a half in the making, and it's been that for more ways than one, right? So obviously, a lot of preparation of the car, doing a lot of testing, a lot of trial and error stuff as we've been setting the car up, but also for myself. So a lot of my close friends know that for the last 15 or so months, I've been on a journey to just get healthier and to get in better shape, also in preparation for Pikes Peak. So I've actually lost about 70 pounds in the last year and put on a lot more muscle. And so been doing lots of things from, weight and resistance training to a ton of cardio. So I've been spending a lot of time on my bike, climbing mountains around the Bay Area on my bike to, make sure that my heart and my lungs are ready for what the mountain has to throw at me. But I am mindful of the fact that I live at sea level, right? And so I'm sure I'm going to feel some of the effects of the altitude, which is why I do plan to run oxygen, at the mountain as well. Yeah.
Ah, interesting. You're just a tube into your helmet kind of a thing, just a additional oxygen, not straight into your nose or something, or how are you doing it?
Yeah, so Pikes Peak offers a prescription to all competitors who want to run oxygen.
Ah, interesting. I did not
And
know that.
so, yeah, so I actually have a doctor's note for it because apparently you can't just go and buy this stuff.
Ah,
And so there's a local vendor in Colorado Springs that provides the tanks, regulators, and all of the things that you need to be able to run it. So for me, it'll be a nose piece that'll go into my helmet. And that's another thing that I've been practicing is I don't know
yeah,
about you, but I'm kind of a mouth breather when I'm driving a
yeah,
car, and I've been
yeah.
training myself to kind of breathe in and out of my nose since I'm going to be using that thing.
Yeah, you have it running and getting none of the effect of it, right? Because you got your mouth open. Yeah, well,
Right, exactly,
yeah,
exactly. That would be a fail, right?
yeah. Oh well, there are. I don't know if you added it, but there are some systems that we can get blood pressure and oxygen, based off of some sensors that are on your body too. Might be an interesting thought of if you don't have those already, to think about adding those.
Yeah,
So interesting. I think Matt Romanowski, who's here in the chat, has run some on his car where he keeps track of his heart rate and his blood and oxygen rate. So yeah, perfect. Here's you mentioned the slice of the track here. This page we have. There's uh, just a little bit more about it. 12, almost 12 and a half miles. It's all paved now, and but 156 turns. That's where your sim racing is going to come into play. 4,700 feet of gain. You think about that, and you go, okay, well that's not a ton, but you're starting at 9,300, just short of 10,000 feet to start,
yeah.
and finishing at 14,115 feet. The I'll show another slide of some data here in just a moment, but average grade 7%, going uphill quite a bit. At 7% grade, people don't think that's a huge number, but about the steepest you're ever going to find on a highway system is about 6%. So that's that's pretty steep as a for overall for the entire thing, right? The track record, you're probably not going to get too close to this one, I suppose. But
Definitely
yeah,
not.
yeah, 7 minutes and 57 seconds, average speed of 90 miles an hour up the hill, and you can see all the corners and stuff. And there's the Volkswagen IDR that did that time up the mountain. Pretty impressive car and driver combination there, right? So here's some of Tom's data that he's been working with. He sent to me, and then here's a look at the run in Race Studio 3, just to give us all an idea of what it looks like. Interesting thing. Here's the speed trace going up there. It's you can kind of see where the tighter corners are. This middle section here in this red area is pretty tight. A lot of low speed corners. There's one there that's under 20 miles per hour. It's a tight one, and then you can see the areas where the track opens up a little bit, where including a top speed on some of his runs in the sim of being around 140 miles per hour. So kind of interesting. Here's an elevation track. Here's the slope of the road. It's kind of interesting though, even though climbing the hill starts off a little bit flat and then starts up, and then there's a couple areas here where the GPS slope is showing that it's actually goes downhill for little
Mm.
parts, very short little pieces, but downhill just a little bit for short pieces. So you've studied data like this for quite a while. How are you taking the data from the sim and bringing it into Race Studio, and what kind of things are you looking for? Is it truly just bigger picture things, the time compare, where have I finally learned those corners the best, or are you digging in even a little bit deeper than that?
Yeah, so I would say for me, adding the MXP dash to the sim and being able to pull the data into Race Studio is really helpful for me. Mostly, I guess initially for me, it was just about consistency, right? So I don't feel like I have as much, driving talent as a lot of the racers that I'm lucky enough to be friends with. So, but for me, just being consistent early on was a challenge in learning something like Pikes Peak, right? So I joked with you, Roger, at the beginning of this webinar that I've gone off the mountain way more times than I've done successful runs, right? Because one of the things that I realized in driving Pikes Peak on the sim is, while I have good car control, right, and I can catch a slide or whatever else, at Pikes Peak, sometimes you don't even have the room to do
Yeah,
that, right?
no
You
room.
drop one wheel or the back end gets loose and you're flying off the mountain or you're going into a boulder or something like that. So um, I have tried very hard to drive consistently on the sim, and so that's why the data is really helpful for me. So when I do, when I overlay multiple runs and look at my speed traces and see, I can get a general idea of how consistent am I actually being, right? And so that's been probably the most useful or powerful thing for me. And then, as I've gotten into the data a little bit more finely, I think it's been able to see, okay, if I left the car in fourth gear and sort of ran it to the rev limiter as opposed to grabbing fifth and trying to carry speed, like, did I gain anything or did I not, right? And so I will mention, and folks on the call may be wondering, in Assetto, I'm using a BMW that is set up to be as close to my car in real life as possible, right? So in terms of the weight of the car, even the power map of the car, the cool thing about Assetto is that you can load engine parameters into Assetto, right? So we actually took data from the dyno runs that I've done with my car and input those torque and power figures by RPM into Assetto. The car then has the same exact gear ratios, the same rear end ratio, and then in terms of tires, I found something in Assetto that feels very similar to the tires that I'm running in real life. And the reason that I'm able to know that I'm close is that when I compare the sim times that I run in Assetto, for example, at Sonoma, compared to what I actually run in the car in real life, it's only off by maybe a second and a half or something like that. So I'm in the ballpark, right? Especially when you consider Pikes Peak is something that's going to be, around 12 minutes. It gives me a good idea, right?
Are you faster in the sim or slower than the sim at Sonoma?
I'm always faster on the sim, and
Oh,
I think
interesting.
part of that
Interesting.
is probably the lack of danger or consequences, if you will, right? You can keep your foot buried from the exit of 8 all the way to 10 in a way that you maybe need to think about a little bit more when
Yeah.
you're actually in the car, right?
Well, that and you've just rebuilt a car, and these are just test sessions for a very, very big event. Obviously, you're not going to risk anything in these kind of tests, right?
Yeah, that's actually fair. So Mike and John, who helped do most of the work on the car at TrackSpec, they intentionally made sure that I've been taking it easy for our test days. So I think first test day I wasn't allowed to touch any of the berms. And now I'm only able to use like half of a berm's width, if you will.
Did they detune the car for basically sea level altitude for your testing there, or and then they're going to tune it back up and throw a little bit more boost at it higher up, or did they just leave it like it's going to be up in the mountain?
No, we've left it the way that it's going to
Okay.
be, basically at the mountain. And I think part of that too is most of my racing over the last several years, whether wheel to wheel or doing time trials and stuff, I've been driving cars with like less than 350
Yeah.
horsepower, right? So jumping into something that now makes closer to 550 was a little bit of an adjustment, right?
A fun adjustment, that's got to be a good part of it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, definitely.
The the, we did have one question from Andy that I've been thinking about since I saw it come in. But how reliable was the GPS connection at Pikes Peak? I've looked at data from Dan Awita a little bit here, who is in the chat here. I've never seen that GPS quality has been a problem there. Have you heard anything from any of the previous competitors that you chatted with?
I haven't heard anything negative about GPS. I know cell signal can be really challenging up the mountain, but I think given how they've cleared most of
Yeah.
the trees and things for the road itself, that most people have gotten pretty good data from a GPS standpoint.
That's what I'm hearing too. Heck,
Yeah.
you're closer to the GPS satellites, right? So it's got to be better. No, no,
There
I'm
you go.
just joking a bit. But uh, as far as your sim training that you've done for this, are you a long-term sim racer? We've done a lot of sim racing stuff here on the in our webinars, and we have such a good connection with most of the larger players in the sim market. Is this something that you've just taken up now to getting prepared for Pikes Peak, or is this something that's been a passion of yours for a while?
Yeah, so I've wanted to get into sim racing for a long time. I think one of the constraints for me a couple years ago was I lived in a tiny condo in San Francisco and didn't have room for a sim.
Yeah,
And so about two-ish years ago, when my partner and I, we moved out of the city and into the suburbs, I finally was like, man, I can have a home office, I can build a bit of a man cave, and I can actually have a sim. So I've only had a sim for a little over 2 years now. And initially when I got on, I was trying different things like getting into iRacing and spending time on Assetto and also Competizione. I think where I enjoy being on the sim the most is actually because the Assetto supports a lot of mod tracks and tracks that are local that you don't find in iRacing. For example, I can have Button Willow, right, and Thunderhill and things like that I've enjoyed probably spending the most amount of time on Assetto and just racing with friends, right?
yeah.
So we have our own server and we get to jump on and just kind of mess around and drive local tracks. I don't think I'm super competitive on iRacing. I've dabbled a little bit, but with Pikes being around the corner, most of the last year or so, again, as you heard, has just been spent, driving up Pikes Peak on the sim. Yeah. So we'll see. Maybe afterwards it would be fun to do a little bit more, but I've been kind of hyper focused on just prepping.
I'll bet. And you talked about numbers of runs. I don't remember what you said, like 150 successful runs or something like that up there.
A little bit more than, yeah, it's about double that. So I've
Double.
done
Okay,
like 320 something successful runs. Yeah.
successful
And I can
runs.
tell by looking at the number of kilometers logged. Yeah.
You set up your sim in a way where you have an aim dash that's in front of you, and
I
what was
do.
the thought about that, and getting your sim set up basically like your car, so they're trying to get the, obviously you want to learn the track, but you almost put yourself in the right position for when you actually hit the real track, right?
Yeah, the idea was to simulate as much of the real in car as possible. So since I run an aim dash in my Pikes Peak car, I also wanted to have one at home on the sim, and so I have the pages set up in a way where it looks and feels very similar. And it really is just about like creating not only this like visual memory, right, of what things look like, but also the muscle memory as well, right? So again, to get into a little bit more detail in terms of how I've been prepping on the sim, I've done a lot of runs actually, and people are gonna laugh, but I've done a lot of runs where I actually have my helmet on, just to see like visually how is it different, right? To have my helmet on and looking through the visor. At home, I'm always driving with boots and gloves. And then I'll actually, I have a fan as well. So I run a helmet blower in the car. So again, just trying to create as much of that real environment as I can at home. But I definitely think it is a little bit goofy to be sitting in my office with my helmet on, but can't be over prepared, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly. What have you found has been the most valuable to you? Yeah, we've touched on I think the three main things, right? Learning the track from the sim, and watching videos from others, and data analysis. Have you just merged all three of those together, or has one of those been, you think, the most valuable for learning the track, let alone the speed? With the data side, it's more of a getting up to speed a little bit more, but then you've got to learn the track first. Has the actual runs been good, or watching video, or is it just a merging of all of them?
I think it's been a merging of all of them. I'm mindful of the fact that, comparing what the sim runs look like to real in-car videos. I've watched a lot of
Ah,
in-car runs from a lot of veterans and folks that I know, guys like Dayoshi Hara or Rob Holland, because they're driving cars that are sort of similar in power to weight, right? And so I wanted to use something that was a
yeah.
more reasonable reference. There are still some nuances in terms of what Pikes looks like on the sim compared to in real life. So I've spent a lot of time. I think the sim has been really useful for learning like which way is next, right? That's often probably the most important thing, right? Is the next corner a left or a right? Do I
Yeah.
need to be braking or can I stay in it? Right? That's been helpful. And then mixing in the real life footage has been helping me now start to spot some of the differences, if you will, right? And one of the things that's distinctly obvious to me is Pikes Peak is not a flat road, right? The road is actually quite crowned.
Oh,
And so it's been interesting to me to watch. And I think I've picked up more time on the sim from watching the guys do it in real
uh,
life, is seeing what side of the road to stay on based on what's coming up next, right? Because you can use the banking because of how the road is crowned to your advantage. And also, if you cross over at the wrong moment in time, it can be a disadvantage, right? Because you can sort of pick up the rear end of the car and get loose. So I've been just trying to remember as much of that as possible.
Interesting. They probably do model that into the sim, but it's probably not as visually close to you seeing it as you would when you're watching it from videos from other cars. That's interesting.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then turning that into how you would run the sim, and then eventually, obviously, in the runs up the hill in real life. That's kind of cool. Yeah, that's like Brick said in the chat. So much info to keep track of, right? So
yeah,
many things that you're trying to feed yourself, and then they only give you a few runs up the hill. The
right.
Andy had a question there that I thought I was actually meaning to talk about a little bit earlier, but I forgot. So let me share this again, just to show and to talk about that a little bit. Andy's question is, do you have a way to do splits or predictive timing on the hill climb with aim? The that is built in, and what with Tom doing all of the runs that he's done, and he's had some good runs that he has shared with us, Brick and I, and the and so what, as you see here on the map, There is on the track map inside of Race Studio 3. There is some timed splits on the track map that we've created. We're going to fine tune those a little bit more for Tom as we get a little bit closer and get them to him. But there's distinct points along the track that are kind of known points, right? And what I've done is I've placed GPS based markers there already. Of course, the start and the finish, and then the different spots. The testing that Tom is going to get to do, and I'll let you touch on a little bit deeper here in just a moment, but they're going to be breaking it up into thirds for these for certain official days, and then the top and the bottom half for other days. And we're going to build track maps that are distinctly built with just those bits of information in it. So then Tom will be loading those into the car, and then using those with information that he already has, or certainly the multiple runs that he's going to make. Then the predictive lap timing will work correctly, and of course the data analysis in Race Studio 3 will work correctly. What how Tom's going to share with me a little bit later as we get a little closer. He shared some documents with me already with the specific points. But Tom, how do you look forward to using that kind of a breakdown inside of the car, the predictive inside of the car, or are you going to be studying that more in the software afterwards?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for me, off the bat, I'm going to be really excited about having that data. So most of the time when I'm driving on a road course, I drive with the predictive on, and being able to see kind of plus minus right to my best. That way I have a sense of, hey, I'm on a good lap here, or I totally blew the entry to one corner and lost 2/10 or whatever else. That's usually very helpful information for me to have. I will be honest, there's a part of me that worries that then having that information is going to prompt me to
Yeah.
maybe push harder than sort of I need to or should. So I think it's going to be finding the right balance for me in terms of like my mindset as I'm doing the runs. Again, I think and also I don't want to get burned at the stake by Matt, but there's no such thing as too much data. So I would rather have it and use it appropriately than sort of want it and then not be able to get it right.
I did see that comment quite a long time ago in the chat as well. I didn't know if it got past you or not, but uh, of course, I don't know how many. Maybe you can answer this question. You've got this blue section at the bottom. It's the bottom third, that we're showing here when you first start. How many times you're going to have practice days that are going to make the hill available to you in these pieces? Are you going to get 2 or 3 runs? Are you going to get 6 or 7 practice runs on those each individual section? Do you know yet?
Yeah, I have a good rough idea of what to expect, and again, really grateful to a lot of the different veterans that have spent the time over the last several months just kind of answering questions, right?
Yeah.
And imparting advice and wisdom. So this coming weekend, so the car leaves tomorrow for Colorado. Most of the team flies in on Friday, and then we're at the mountain bright and early on Saturday and Sunday this weekend, doing the test weekend. And so for this first test weekend, they actually divide the mountain into quote unquote halves. So what they're doing is they combine the middle and the upper section on Saturday. So that's what I'll be running on Saturday. And then Sunday is this blue section that you just called out, right? The lower part. And the expectation roughly, depending on, if everyone's cars are running smoothly, no incidents, etc., is that should be able to get 5 or 6 runs per day.
Oh, really?
So,
Okay.
so that's what's planned for this coming weekend. During race week, the format changes. So we have a tech inspection on Monday and then practice and qual Tuesday through Friday. So I already know based on the class that I'm in, is that on Tuesday, I'll be running the upper section. Wednesday is my qualifying, which means that I'll be running the lower section. And then Thursday, I'll be running the middle section of the mountain. And then Friday is optional to run middle or upper again. So on each of those practice days, should be also able to maybe do 5 or 6 runs roughly. And then the only catch is on Wednesday when I run qualifying, which is the lower section, the blue part that you're talking about here, you only get 3 runs. So that's a little bit of a catch. Yeah.
Well, everybody is qualifying, right? And then this is not your normal road system in the area, you come up and you must go down, right? There is no other roads to get you around the racetrack coming up, so everything has to stop. Everybody has to shuttle back down to get more to get the next runs. Correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I've gotten some advice to maybe wait to go a little bit later. That way you're not sort of sitting at the top waiting to turn around as long. Again, we'll see how it plays out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting. I'm going to bring I'm going to bring this. Maybe I won't. I was going to bring that back up, but it's already there. We can see these different areas, and it's interesting that for the test session, which is coming up in the next week or so, you're going to be going up to about in here, and then, or actually up to this area, and doing the top and the bottom, and then they break it up in different ways during the testing. So, but what's interesting is you're going to be getting more time than I would have thought. You're going to get enough. You're going to get some decent runs heading up. You're going to be grabbing your own Smarty Cam video. I understand you have a we'll have a either a couple of cameras, or you'll have one of the Smarty Cam 3 duals in there that is going to give you the ability to watch that watch those video runs back with your data. And Race Studio 3 being fantastic that way, where you can have the video playing right at the data, and you can find those areas really quickly. So you'll be able to have that, and I'm going to be available to help you on anything that I can during those times,
Hmm.
and be ready to help you. And I think Brick is going to be out there
Hmm.
supporting the event as well. So we're all
Yeah.
looking forward to it. Looking forward to what you're doing, and how it's working out. So, anything else you kind of like to add about the event itself that we may have missed, or you might have seen questions in the chat? I haven't had a chance to watch it as much as I should have.
Yeah, let me see if there's anything that we missed. Looks
Well,
like John maybe had a question about breathing resistor type units to increase your capacity. Oh, this is for the physical training,
yeah, exactly.
for myself. Yeah, so I haven't tried one of those. I know some of my friends who run at altitude have those. It sort of looks like a Bane mask or something like that, right? And it cuts the amount of oxygen that can get to you. I haven't gotten that hardcore. Maybe I should have, but now it's probably a little bit too late. So we'll see how it plays out. And hopefully having the O2 tank can help offset some of that.
Well, if you
So
don't have you don't have the wherewithal of holding yourself back and waiting till a little bit later in the runs to go up, so you don't have to sit at the top so long. You could probably
yeah,
take the little nose thing and be breathing some oxygen while you're sitting up there waiting to make the run back down, right? So you
yeah,
can at least
yeah,
be able to do that, and that obviously will help a ton. The little bit I've
for sure.
done things like that at high elevations, I've found that it sneaks up on me, and being able to keep that oxygen in your system is, and not let it get ahead of you, is probably going to keep the headaches down and some of the other things that happen.
For sure.
The kind of the last question before we kind of close our way out of this is this a huge event? It's been something that you've been dreaming of for a long time, and planning, and of course working with lots of great partners, and guys that have been helping you get this all done. Um, you seem all in. How dedicated has this been for you? You talked about your health things. You've talked about the car prep. This has been pretty big effort, right?
Yeah, definitely. This has really been an all-in effort for, call it, the last 18 months. So basically from the minute we finished the 25, I had been thinking about Pikes Peak as kind of the next thing. And so a year and a half later, here we are. And so it really has been everything. And from rebuilding the car to preparing myself both in terms of physically learning the mountain, but also from a logistics standpoint. Getting the car to Colorado from California twice is no easy lift. Figuring out all of the different moving parts and pieces. There's just a huge group of people who are involved in making this happen. And I don't think I have enough time to shout everybody out, but everyone knows that I'm incredibly grateful for their support and help, and that includes you guys here as well, Roger.
This is nothing that any one person can do. This effort is huge. It's bigger than even, I mean, getting a car prepared for a normal race weekend at your local track is a large event that takes help. But this is taking it to a whole nother level. So we're happy to be a part of it, and be here to support you. And just because so many of us just love the hill climbs, number one, but Pikes Peak especially. So it's been a joy for us as well. The the so really looking forward to working together with you during the event itself. A lot of early mornings, right? It's
Yeah,
they open up things. You got to be here at 4:30 a.m. and be ready to do this, and that's even a couple hours earlier here on the West Coast, right? So we will
right.
we'll be up with you and doing anything we can. Yeah, perfect. It's gonna be a good time, and looking forward to it. Let's thanks thanks
Same.
thanks to everybody for coming and joining us. And Brick did mention something that, by the way, we've mentioned a couple of times links that have been thrown into the webinar chat for the folks that are here live. All of those exact same links will be in the YouTube description in a couple of hours when this video is up. So if you're watching this later on YouTube, anything that we've talked about, or anything that the folks here that were watching this live have been made available to them, will be available to you in the description below. So keep that in mind, and take a look at some of those things. As we kind of close this one down, there's I talk about the YouTube page and the videos that are available. This is just one more that's added to a large list of videos. That there are over 240 videos that are up on our YouTube site, all about training and learning how to use Race Studio, not just the hardware, but the software, and many other things, including all of our these live webinars that we've done since 2020. So they're all up there and available, and for everyone to see. So the customer support, this is a perfect example of, Brick is going to be there at Pikes Peak. Probably not going to have a van, but it's a little bit of a ways for the drive for that, I suppose. But um, going to be there. We're at tracks all over North America, and so kind of look for all of us that are out there supporting the events. I was at an event this last weekend at Pacific Raceways up here in the Seattle Pacific Northwest area, and if we're not there and you need some help during the week or at other times, there's an 800 number that's available to all of you that are running the AIM hardware and software to get you any help that you might need. We want to make sure that you get the most bang for the buck out of the stuff that you've invested into, and we're here to help. So keep that in mind. The next webinar. The next webinar that we're going to do, it's going to be June 11th, and this is kind of a special one to me. It's something I've been working on for 7, 8, 10 years, number one, but then even a little bit more focused the last couple of years. We're going to have the folks from Mazda Motorsports joining us, and Mazda is going to join us, and we're going to talk about the SMX, the the NC models of the Miatas that now have a class in SCCA currently, and probably other groups very soon. But inside of those cars, they're all running AIM loggers, and what we've been doing is kind of a little bit of a pilot project where we've been working on looking at data from the cars as quickly as we can get it, and using it as the first level of technical compliance. And we're going to talk about that in this next webinar. We're going to have Justin from the Spec MX5 Series manager is going to be joining us, and Josh Smith, the Mazda Motorsports manager, will be with us, and we're going to talk about how this data, how we're bringing in this data, and maybe how that changes the shape of future for spec racing. Anytime we can do a little bit more of our technical compliance, and double checking and making sure that the cars are all equal as best as possible, and do that with data rather than tearing cars apart every time, it's valuable. And this is going to be focusing, and not certainly we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the basic concept of what we're doing there, but I'm also going to then jump in and show the data analysis tools that we've built and that we're using, and virtually all of them, well, every one of them is available inside of Ray Studio 3. And then but how the math formulas and the different processes that are being followed, I think will be very interesting to anybody that is running AIM data. Things that they can bring into their way of doing data analysis. It's time for us to show a little bit more of this, and I think everybody will find that to be interesting. So next webinar will be the SMX data and Mazda Motorsports. So that'll be a fun one for everyone, I think. Tom, it's been great chatting with you. There's a picture of the car. I know we kind of showed that picture a little bit earlier, but there's a picture of what
Yeah.
the car looks like, and it's what it will look like when it's up there. And this is testing at Sonoma. It sure looks like from the background. And
Yep.
Tom has an Instagram page and some social media where he's been really sharing a lot about this information. And Tom, tell us a little bit about maybe how people can follow this, when the race actually is, and anything else you can share with people as we're kind of closing this one down.
Sure. Yeah. So Instagram's a great place to stay connected with me. If you're on that, I try and post a lot of updates and cool content and things like that, and definitely plan to share as much as I can as long as I have cell reception, both during this test weekend coming up as well as during race week. There's also an intention to release a lot of really cool video content over the next several weeks. And we'll be releasing those with various partners and friends like AIM, IBOC, Toyo, Jersey, etc. So if you get a chance, give some of those pages a follow as well, and I usually post links and stuff to that. I think the other thing to mention is, as Brick shared, we may be trying to do some live streaming from the car, but I also know that Pikes Peak does a really great live stream during
Yeah,
the
very much
event
so.
as well. So tune into that.
The race itself, June 23rd, right? All day long on Sunday. They're live streaming. Do they do any of the qualifying or anything like that, or they just live stream the race?
I think it's just the races when they put on the full production, but
That's
I
right.
I
That's right.
could be wrong. So if I do find that out, we'll make sure that we share that via my page and AIM so people can tune in.
Perfect. Perfect. Everybody, if you want to keep up with what Tom is doing there, of course, follow him on Instagram, and then the race itself on the 23rd of June. Keep an eye out for our live streaming attempts. It's going to be hard. It's a tough environment. The maybe maybe after practice, Tom will find the need to get the Starlink antenna up and running, right, and have it in his paddock area. But no, it is tough up there. Obviously, it's the Wild West a little bit, right? It's there's not a ton of infrastructure up there, but there's a lot more than there used to be. So perfect. I look forward to it too, Tom, and I wish you the best, and for you and the entire team, and looking forward to watching this and all the rest of the competitors that'll be there. So, anything else you'd like to share as we kind of are getting ready to close this one down?
No, just appreciation for being on today. Thanks for thinking of inviting me to this. I've been
Absolutely.
a long time watcher, and so fun to be able to participate myself. And just want to say thanks to everyone that jumped on to follow along and appreciate the support. And I'm excited. We'll try and do a really good job in the coming weeks here. Thank you so much.
We will try to find a spot and maybe have you back afterwards where we can look at some video and maybe have another webinar where we kind of close this out and see how things went and what your feeling was at the end of all the testing and the preparation you did versus the reality of being there. That might be a fun discussion in a few months from now as well. So
Yeah,
looking
sounds
forward to it.
great.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate it. Thanks everybody for being here, and we'll see you at the next webinar. Thanks everybody. Talk to you soon.